You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. Almost a year ago, first in Boston, then in dioceses across the United States, American Catholics were forced to recognize that over the years, thousands of children and teenagers have been sexually abused by Roman Catholic priests and church workers. In addition, in many of those instances, church leaders, including bishops, covered up many of the cases of abuse and protected the abusers at the expense of young victims. In June, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops convened in Dallas, Texas for 3 days. They struggled to craft policies to minimize new instances of sexual abuse by priests and church workers and eliminate the abuse of authority by the hierarchy. At the end of that meeting, the bishops adopted a new charter for the protection of children and young people. One provision called for the creation of a National Review Board of lay Catholics to oversee the implementation of the new policies. The board's chairperson is a retiring Oklahoma governor, Frank Keating. Altogether, 13 people have been appointed to the board, including a judge on the New Mexico Supreme Court, a medical doctor from Baltimore, several attorneys, university administrators, and business leaders. One member of the National Review Board is from the Cincinnati region. Bill Burleigh is the chairman of the board of Scripps Howard, which is headquartered here in Cincinnati. Mr. Burleigh worked his way up from reporter to editor to president of the Post and president and CEO of Scripps Howard. He is a well-known Catholic layman and lives in northern Kentucky. Bill, welcome to Newsmakers. Talking about this National Review Board, exactly from your perspective now, you've been meeting for 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months. What is your charge as you understand it? What's your responsibility?
We have a very specific threefold mission that we've been asked to carry out under the terms of the charter. Number one, to find an executive director of the new Office of Child and Youth Protection, whose appointment was announced this past week.
And that person is?
That person is Kathleen McChesney, who is the third-ranking official in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the highest-ranking FBI female agent in the country. She is retiring in order to take over this job. Very important key post and a wonderful choice to fill it. The second part of our job is to oversee the work of Kathleen's office, the most important part of which is to conduct an annual audit of all dioceses in the United States to make sure that they have in place the standards that we require to make sure that everything possible is being done to eliminate the possibility of sex abuse in the future. Those dioceses that are not in compliance will be so named publicly. It's very serious business. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly in the long run, we have to conduct 2 studies. One is an epidemiological study to determine statistically what this problem is all about. How big is it in the United States, in the church? Are there any geographical patterns? What are the statistical clues? And then finally, a study that the board itself is in the process of making on what are the causes and effects of the problem.
In the time that you have been meeting, and if I remember correctly, Governor Keating was named, was the meeting in Dallas still going on, or was it
Governor
right
Keating was named at the conclusion of the Dallas meeting.
So in June. And then other members starting to be filled in after that. How often have you met? How much work has already been accomplished? How much have you gotten into this?
Well, I was asked by Bishop Gregory to join in early July. We had our first meeting in Washington. We have had 3 formal meetings of the full board, but we've had countless individual meetings of the subcommittees that have been formed and individual meetings among various parties in the board. It has been countless hours spent. There's a great sense of urgency among the board members that we act with much dispatch. This is such a serious problem. It has to be eliminated, and it has to be eliminated now.
You've mentioned that one of the things that's been accomplished is the hiring of a director for the office that will staff a lot of this work. how about initiating those studies that you mentioned, or have you been able to get to that, or did you have to get this office set up?
All these things have been running on parallel tracks. The studies are underway. We've compiled a very extensive list. At the moment, it probably has more than 100 names on it, on authorities inside the church and outside the church. Great diversity of opinion, a lot of disagreement. And we have plans to interview all the people on that list. They are now being contacted on whether they will agree to do so. On the statistical study, we have drawn up a what the professionals call RFP.
Request for proposal.
Right. That will be circulated very shortly among academic institutions and other specialized places that have the capacity to do this kind of work. We have several who've been brought to our attention. We hope to get that going right away. The first study that I referred to on the causes and effects, it will be probably a year before that can be completed because it is going to be so comprehensive. On the statistical end, we keep getting told by many different people that even though that seems easy, it's never been done. So it'll be the first kind of authoritative look on the extent of the problem.
One of the real issues, one of the concerns of people has, from the June meetings, and I was in Dallas for the June meetings, was whether this board, and whether diocesan boards too, there are parallel diocesan boards, lay boards, would really have independence, would have autonomy at least, would have the ability to set their agendas and pursue the issues they think need to be pursued. What's your experience up to this point about your ability to act independently?
Well, I think the precedent was set in our first meeting in Washington, where the president of the conference and the staff of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops came in, briefed us, and at noon we asked them to excuse themselves so that we could go into executive session in order to demonstrate that ours is an independent role. We are there to help the bishops, to help the church that we all love, but at the same time, in order to achieve the credibility that this board is going to have to achieve in order to be believed by a skeptical lay public, we need independence. We need some space.
And you feel like you've asserted that. Have you had any experience of the bishops trying to clamp down on that?
Absolutely none.
Okay.
The bishops have said, thank goodness you people are in place. You're now a lightning rod and you're getting all the attention and heat that we had prior to this.
One of the things, though, that I'm sure many people have paid attention to in the last few weeks, the Vatican has finally responded to the charter and to the norms that were adopted at Dallas. And there have been a number of revisions, and I don't want to go through all of those, but one of the clear areas, as you read through these, it's clear that the Vatican is concerned about somehow lay boards assuming powers that they believe that the bishop ought to have. So, for example, on page 4, and this isn't talking about your board, but it's talking about the diocesan-based boards, rather than boards doing assessments, the new language is advising. Rather than boards making recommendations, it's offering advice. I mean, it's softened the language. Did anything that the Vatican do change the position and the power or the independence of your board?
The Vatican made no comment about the existence of the National Review Board. Our charter remains as it was written in Dallas. I happen to think, Dan, that the media, you and I are both members of the media, jumped to too many conclusions when the Vatican said, hey, wait. The headline said that the charter had been, quote, rejected. If you read carefully what you read in part, I think you will see that the charter has been strengthened because all the areas of ambiguity that existed after Dallas have been made very clear now, and we know where the fence rows stand. As to the bishops and the local review boards, if anything has changed there, it is made clear that the bishop is in charge of his diocese and the bishop is in charge of his priests. That's been church law for 2,000 years, and it can't be any different. So they wanted to eliminate any doubt that perhaps a lay person could fire a priest. However, when you look at the part that you just read to me, the lay review boards that have been established in every 195 dioceses in the United States still retain that power that they were given in Dallas, and that is to assist the bishop in determining the validity of complaints. Bishops say that they need this outside assistance. One of the things that our board wants to make sure is that all 195 of these local review boards are indeed independent, that they don't have church employees filling the 5 slots. There must be a couple of priests according to the rules, right. But the rest of them need to be truly independent laymen who can render truly independent judgments about these awful complaints that come before them.
Do you have any sense of how many dioceses have complied with setting up that kind of board at this point?
One of the very first things that our national board did, we wanted to know what the situation was. Mm-hmm. Are they in compliance or aren't they? So we asked for a fast snapshot following Dallas. What that showed was that the vast majority of dioceses have something in place. A few smaller dioceses without money and without resources have been slow. We want to help them put in place what they need. The others are on the way. Now it'll be the job of this new office headed by Ms. McChesney to go to each diocese and see whether what they have in place is what is needed, and if it's not what is needed, how we can help them get it in place. One of the other parts of our work is to find what are the best practices. We have a subcommittee that's meeting with authorities, non-Catholic authorities that have dealt with sex abuse for many years. What needs to be done to create safe environment for children? And we intend to have those safe environments in place in all 195 dioceses.
We're talking on Friday morning. This show is going to air on Sunday morning. Your board and the bishops will be meeting beginning on Sunday. What do you expect to come out of your board meetings first, and we'll talk about the bishops second? What do you expect to have happen this week?
Well, it's a very important juncture for both the bishops and our board. Our board will be meeting with Ms. McChesney for the first time and putting her on the way, what we expect her to do and how quickly we want it done. At the same time, we've been invited to attend the debate that the bishops will be having on these changes that you referred to back from Rome. My expectation is that the bishops will approve the changes, they will go back to Rome, and the so-called recognitio, which is the authority to make these particular local laws throughout the United States, will then be granted by the Vatican.
Mm-hmm. So you expect that they will debate this, essentially adopt it, which will allow them to send this back and get the official recognitio very quickly. Your board will be meeting with the bishops. Will the bishops and/or your board be meeting with representatives of SNAP, the organization that represents people who have been abused in the past?
Our board has had two listening sessions with both principal organizations of victims. There are two, SNAP and Link Up. Okay. We have heard some terrible stories, some heartbreaking stories from victims. We have been moved by what we've heard. If we only understood the problem in the abstract, those listening sessions help us to understand that this is not something that is just theoretical. It is real, and it's hurtful, and it has created enormous chaos in a number of lives. And I think we have now heard what we need to hear to get on track to do something about it.
As a loyal Catholic, as somebody who's now on this board, what's your feeling about the future, the ability of the church to address this problem and cope with it positively?
Well, I love the church. I'm optimistic. The church has been with us, Christ Church, for 2,000 years. It has, anybody who knows anything about church history understands that it is a very human church, made up of fallible, sinful people who have done some pretty terrible things through the years, but through God's guidance, the church has prevailed, and I have no reason to believe that we won't get through this one, as awful as it is.
Okay. Well, good luck with your meetings this week, and good luck with your work in the future, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by former Judge Nathaniel Jones to talk about possible reforms in the local court and judicial systems. Welcome back. For the last year and a half, members of the Cincinnati community from all walks of life have been working through Cincinnati Can to try to figure out how do we respond to the issues confronting our community. Some of those people have been organized into a committee that has focused on the judicial system, examining the way it works now and possible changes in the future system. Someone who has been a valuable resource during that process is former federal judge Nathaniel Jones. And Judge Jones is my guest this morning on Newsmakers. Judge Jones, welcome.
Glad to be with you.
And it's very good to have you here on Newsmakers. And now that you're off the bench, I hope you can join me more frequently and we can talk freely about lots of things in the community.
I look forward to it.
I know you haven't been able to be a member of this particular committee because you were on the bench, but what are the sorts of issues that are really in the forefront of this committee's work? What are they trying to do? I understand that one of them deals with just how we select jurors.
Well, that is very significant. I think if we step back a minute and realize why it's important to have a judicial system and a legal system that attracts the confidence of people, is in our society, confidence and trust becomes very important. And if that's lacking, then nothing works. The Can Commission had an approach which is very, very fundamental. That is to try to figure out where there are impediments, where are there systemic flaws, and they identified certain areas. One was in this whole method of jury selection. And it was decided that this is something that had to be targeted and exposed, and the flaws had to be addressed.
And how do we choose our jurors today? In Hamilton County, where do the jurors come from?
From voter registration rolls.
Okay, so if you're not registered to vote, you're never going to get called to be a juror?
Very unlikely that you'll ever have a chance to serve on a jury. And that was a recommendation for change, to broaden the pool so that persons in the community from a more diverse group would have this opportunity.
How would you define the new pool? What would, if it's not going to be voter registration, what will it be?
Motor vehicle registration. When people apply for automobiles, automobile licenses, driver's licenses, that broadens the pool, and there's a greater number of people who can be brought into the process. Who
has control of that? Is that a decision that's made county by county? Is that a decision that's made statewide? Who makes that decision?
Well, the state has overall responsibility, but counties can decide how juries, usually county commissioners, or those who control the voting apparatus within the county.
So this is something that local officials do have the ability to make some changes about.
Yes.
Okay, so one would be to broaden out that jury pool. A second one would be to make it easier for people to serve on the jury because of what they're paid. What do jurors in this county get right now?
The fee or compensation for jurors today is $7.50. That doesn't even pay for parking. It doesn't even cover one's lunch, which means that if a person is in an employment situation where their compensation is withheld for failure to report to work, that's a fine. That's punitive, and that doesn't stimulate one's desire to participate in the justice system.
You know, I have to say that I have not served on a jury in a jury situation since 1986. But in 1986, it was $7.50, and people in 1986 were complaining that it had been that way forever. Nobody ever said how long, and now, what, 16 years later, it's still $7.50.
It's a clear deterrent. It's a clear deterrent.
Again, do other counties have different rates? Do other states have different rates? Where's that set?
Other counties have different rates. Cincinnati or Hamilton County is the lowest of all counties in the state of Ohio. Some pay as high as $40, $50 a day to prospective jurors.
The theory is never to replace a person's salary. It is always, as I understand it, the jury fee is always to cover your basic out-of-pocket expenses.
That's what it is.
Parking, travel, lunch, you know, that sort of thing.
Sort of a per diem arrangement.
Okay. And can Commission proposing a specific level? If it's not $7.50, are you proposing what it should be, or are you just saying this needs to be increased?
Well, that it needs to be increased. There have been some proposed that the ceiling should be raised, and urging for instance, the county commissioners have that, they control the budget, and urging the courts, the judges, to join in the recommendation. And that has not been easy to get the judges to even step forward.
Why do you think that is?
Well, change. When you're talking about change and you're talking about money and you impact upon budgets, you have elective judges. And where you have a system of elective judges who want to be sensitive to the currents in the community, budget-wise and others, there's a reluctance. And it's one of the virtues of the CAN Commission. It has shaken up the thinking, the institutional thinking that has governed this community for a long period of time.
I have to tell you that I think from the outside, for people not involved in the CAN Commission, the assumption is that not much is happening, that there isn't much shaking up. But you're saying that, in fact, even these sorts of simple things do shake things up.
I think CAN has been very, very significant, very profound. I view CAN as I viewed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, because what CAN has done and is doing is identifying systemic institutional problems and trying to get the players to commit to change. And that's never easy, and it doesn't always grab headlines. Headlines go to those who are provocative, those who are marching, those who are stirring the pot. But in terms of trying to bring about systemic change in a meaningful way, it's not very sexy. And so it doesn't grab the attention of the public. But CAN has been working across the board to deal with this justice system and many other contributing causes to dissatisfaction in a very meaningful way. So I think it has been a significant addition to this community.
We have just about a minute left, but you began this by saying that one of the things that's absolutely necessary in a community is trust. Not just in relationship to CAN, but in relationship to the entire process of where we've been since April 2001. How would you evaluate trust levels in this community right now?
Well, it hasn't been as good. At some levels it has improved, but it hasn't been as good as it needs to be. For one thing, we have to begin accentuating the positive in this community. With all of these great things that CAN is doing and these fundamental recommendations that are being proposed, unless they can be elevated to at least the same level of exposure as those who are advocating the negative and those who are the naysayers and say nothing is changing, then it's going to be very difficult. But I think that requires a change in attitude of priority, what's important and what isn't. And the work of CAN has been profoundly important, and it needs to be elevated and exalted and acknowledged.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Been interesting, concrete, small things, but that's what changes a community. Thank you for all your work over the years, and I hope to see you back here many times.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men who are shaping our community for the future and building trust. Have a good week.